Food for Thought on News Talk 760 WJR is presented by Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and by the Food Bank Council of Michigan, creating a food-secure state.
Gerry, I think there are 198 countries in the world, and I've been in 128 of them at last count. Each of these countries and cultures are unique, and within them, they have their own subcultures. I've met people in villages that click for their language. I've laughed in Spanish and Swahili and half a dozen other languages that I'm no longer proficient in. And as different and as unique as those places are, there are a couple of things that are universal. And one of the constants that unites every culture is food. I can take you to a village in East Africa today. We could drive in and we will be greeted warmly. We'll be received and welcomed. And soon, food will appear. Now, the thing is, there might be just a handful of food in the entire village, but they're going to go cook it and bring it to you and I because we're guests. Food is a powerful tool that unites. Think about the President of the United States. He will sponsor a state dinner, not a steak dinner, but a state dinner, and he will bring the best that we have to offer for those most influential guests. In all my travels, I realized that food not only unites, but it also communicates value. That's why when someone is coming over, we figure out what we're going to give them to eat. We really want something to be special. We want to find that something that fits the occasion, because food communicates value. Food is the center of our social life. We gather around it, we experience life around it. Our friends, fellowship, and relationships all hover around food.
Yeah, is that your daddy? Is that your daddy?
Think back on some of the best times in your life, and food won't be very far away from that memory. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, and of course the most important of all holidays, the Super Bowl, where food is centric to all those celebrations.
The quarterback fakes a throw left, hands off right, running back. He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh, the hole closes up on him, only to gain 1 yard.
There's a woman in Grand Rapids who inherited 3 grandchildren, and she's raising them. She worked hard, but now she's retired. And you know what she's doing? She's volunteering in the very pantry she used to get food from to help her meet the need when she inherited those 3 grandchildren. She's retired now and volunteers as a translator for the pantry where she received all that help. Food unites us, and it communicates value. I want us to keep talking about this. And with the guests that we have on the show this week, I want us to realize that solving hunger, creating food, starts in the field. Gerry and I will be right back to talk with Scott Piggott, the CEO for the Michigan Farm Bureau. You come back and be with us.
Welcome back to Food for Thought, sponsored by Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and the Food Bank Council of Michigan. Once again, Dr. Phil Knight.
Gerry Brisson in the WJR studios. Thanks for tuning in to Food for Thought. And Gerry, glad to have you back here as our ongoing and most knowledgeable thought leader and co-host on the show.
It's always great to be here.
Thanks very much for being here. On our line right now is another great thought leader in this world of agriculture and food security, and it's Scott Piggott, who is the CEO for the Michigan Farm Bureau. And I love how you introduce yourself, Scott, that you serve the farmers of Michigan. And That is exactly what you do, and I can give testimony to that. So welcome to Food for Thought.
Thank you so much, Phil. Wonderful to be on.
Hey, Scott, I know right now, your headquarters is in Lansing, but you're not there. You're in D.C., and you're doing some very important work down there. Can you tell us a little bit about the trip?
Once a year, we're blessed with bringing farmers out to their nation's capital. It is wonderful that we have a building as citizens of the country that we can go and we can talk with those that are representing us and making decisions on our behalf. We're blessed. We had farmers visit with each of the congressional delegation just to talk with them about some key issues that are affecting them. 3 that we focused on this trip: upcoming a potential farm bill coming in 2018. Trying to dispel some myths that the farm bill is nothing more than a bunch of money that goes out to farmers. In fact, out of all the money, about 80% of it ensures that we help people in need that need assistance. So we talked a lot about the farm bill. We've talked a lot about agricultural labor. We have a lot of farmers in our state that do direct harvests of fruits and vegetables that can't find help. They publicize in local papers, and yet they can't get people to come. So we've been helping them to secure folks that are willing and good at picking fruits and vegetables. Immigration policy has a big part to that. The third issue is just regulatory reform. Our farmers fill out a lot of papers, and they have a lot of burdens placed on them to be able to do a lot of paperwork because the government believes that it's necessary. And regulation is good, don't get me wrong. Regulation ensures that we have a safe food supply, but a little concerned about too much paperwork. So those are things that our farmers have talked about for the last 2-3 days, meeting with our senators and our legislators in Congress, and they've had a great couple days still.
Awesome. Well, we were just down last week ourselves at the Anti-Hunger Conference, and, of course, top of the mind there is also the Farm Bill, and I think that we have a tremendous amount of energy and synergy and crossover, I should say, in areas that we're concerned about that the Farm Bill addresses as well. And you really named a lot of them right there that your folks are talking to the legislators about in D.C. Even this week. And I follow you guys on Twitter, so I've been seeing some really great photos of the farmers having meetings with their congressmen. So what's been the reception there?
The reception is fantastic. It's always good, and I'd encourage any of the folks listening, if there's a way that you can meet with your congressman and help them to understand how you feel, and engagement is just hugely important, however you feel about a specific topic. And we encourage engagement within our membership of farmers. We want them to be able to, we want to position them to clearly articulate the things that affect their farms directly. And one path for that is meeting with those congressmen and those aides here in D.C. and understanding how a little bit of the process works. So our farmers are very knowledgeable. They're great businessmen, and they care a lot. They want to make sure that the food they're producing makes it where it's supposed to see ending hunger is a big part of what we do every day, and we want to make sure that those congressmen understand that.
It's such a logical thing to assume that the people who are growing the food are concerned about people eating the food, right? You talked about having a safe food supply. You talked about how farmers really get, in I think, some fundamental ways that food is the baseline that gets us all together, whether that's dinner with the family or helping people who don't quite make ends meet have enough so they can take hunger off the table. And does that resonate with your experience when you're out talking to the farmers?
Absolutely. When we talk to our farmers, so many of the folks that I work for, we're blessed with having maybe their spouses or their children. If they're not farming, a lot of times they still live in the rural communities. A lot of times they're very involved in the schools that happen in our rural communities, and they're concerned. Childhood food scarcity happens in rural communities as often, in some cases in Michigan, as more often than it happens inside of our larger cities. We have a lot of our folks that are engaged in the organization that understand that if kids don't have something to eat when they get home, how are they going to study? How are they going to stay focused? How are they going to I saw something in the Capitol when I was with our farmers, and one of our farmers repeated it. The freedom that we have gives us the ability to have ideas and to think. In the absence of freedom, from those things that we take for granted every day, which is getting something to eat. If you don't have that freedom, if you're tied to just not knowing where your next meal is coming from, how are you going to do well in school? How are you going to be an active member of your community? And our farmers recognize that, and we are part of the solution. We continue to strive to do more. And unfortunately, right now, it baffles us sometimes how we can, as a country, can allow folks to be hungry. We work really hard on it, Gerry, and it's at the top of their minds.
And one of the things I find really inspiring, and Gleaners here works with farmers directly in many, many cases to get our food, is how much risk a farmer has to take. You know, not just risk from, you know, the weather and those sorts of things, which obviously changes how much crop you get to work with, but commodity pricing risks and all kinds of things that are very, very complex things to manage. And in spite of that, our farmers every year come to us and say, we are going to do the absolute best we can for you, not at the end of the risk, but at the front end, right? At the beginning, and saying, whatever else happens, this is the commitment we're going to make to you, and then we'll figure out the back end when it happens. And boy, I'll tell you what, that from a business perspective is really unusual.
Yeah. In my service to the farmer, I do truly believe that we all have a finite pool of worry. There's only so many things we can worry about. And at the front of our farmers' minds is, first of all, you know, God gives us the weather. We don't make it, so we make the crops we can. We don't set the prices. We take them from a market and hope that we have a good enough crop and a good enough marketing. We're good enough business people that we can keep making a living at what we do. On top of that, we got the same worries as everybody else. How are our children doing? How's our community doing? We have those same things, and sometimes you would think that maybe some of those bigger picture things fall out of people's minds because they can only engage in so much. I am so proud of our members, of our farmers, because they are thoughtful people. They are giving people, and you're very right. They keep others at the front of their minds, and it's a blessing to work for them.
He's Scott Piggott. He is the CEO for the Michigan Farm Bureau. You're listening to Food for Thought. And Scott, I want to hold you over, if you have time, to stay with us at least for one more segment. And I'd really like to drill down a little bit on some of the labor issues that our farmers here in Michigan are facing.
I'd be glad to.
Super. Let's do that. Folks, you're listening to Food for Thought. Gerry Brisson, Dr. Phil Knight with Scott Piggott from Farm Bureau, and we'll be right back.
It's Food for Thought with Dr. Phil Knight on WJR.
We're back here on Food for Thought. Gerry Brisson is in the studio. Scott Piggott, who is the CEO for the Michigan Farm Bureau, is on the phone from Washington, D.C., where you're leading a contingent of Michigan farmers there to the nation's capital in order to influence the decision makers. And one of the areas, Scott, that know that you're concerned about, and one of the things I love about your leadership is that you don't just identify a problem, but you also seek and create solutions. You're much more than a problem spotter. You're a problem solver. And that big problem that's facing our farmers here in Michigan is labor, the shortage of labor. Can you just unpack that a little bit for us?
Sure, I can. And a quick clarification too, Phil. I'm very blessed with being on the staff of the Farm Bureau, but our farmers truly are our leaders. The president of the Farm Bureau is always a full-time farmer, as well as our board of directors. We have 140 of our folks out here. They're all great leaders within their communities, and I truly am blessed to serve them. We do have a labor. We think about labor a lot in agriculture because it stares us in the face. We're very diverse agriculture in Michigan. We grow over 300 different things on farms. Second only in diversity to California. And a lot of those crops that we grow require hand harvesting, whether the juicy apples that you eat when you're up in Traverse City or the asparagus that you eat throughout the summer and in the spring. Those crops, which we grow very well in Michigan, we lead the nation in some areas like tart cherries as well as blueberries. Not all of them are mechanically harvested, and we need folks to help us pick crops. We advertise in local papers. We recruit people in the local communities. We pay a wage that is very competitive. It's mandated at the federal level that we pay a competitive wage. And we still have a hard time finding people. And we leave crops in the field some years. 2 years ago, we left over 1 million pounds of asparagus out in the field. We didn't have an adequate work supply. It's not a secret. Agriculture uses folks from other countries to help pick our crops. It's not an aspiration, I think, that we give to our children that they grow up to pick asparagus or to pick apples or pick other crops or to milk cows. We use folks from other countries. We've had a hard enough time. When 9/11 happened, a lot of things happened with our borders. The current conversation about immigration continues to circle around, and we want secure borders. We want folks in this country to be here legally, but we also want to face the reality that in the absence of folks who are Americans who can pick our crops, we need to provide solutions to our farmers if we want them to continue to grow and to produce fruit and vegetables. We did build a company at Michigan Farm Bureau. It's our Great Lakes Ag Labor Services. It is a program that helps our farmers to go through the legal federal H-2A program, is what it's called, to bring workers in from other countries. They're only here for short periods of time, maybe a couple weeks during harvest. They have a job description. They have a contract individually with those farmers. They have housing that's inspected. They have all the things. They get trips we take them on trips to get groceries, and they know their working hours. It is truly a contract. They're very good at what they do. They are skilled workers. It is not easy work picking fruit and picking vegetables. They're very good at it, and they do it because it's good money, and they're very good at what they do. If I haven't already mentioned it, if you bring folks out, I've heard it said over the years, well, we got a lot of people in this country that aren't working, and we're taking those jobs away from those folks. Again, to participate in this program, we advertise, and it's expensive. We advertise in all the local newspapers, online, competitive wage, ranging from a minimum of around $12.55. But in the picking season, if you're good at what you do, you can make upwards of $18, $19 an hour picking fruits and vegetables. And again, you have to be good at it. And just to have somebody come out, you can't just stand in the orchard with your finger in your nose. You have to pick fruit. And for those folks that are good at it, those farmers, they treat them very, very well. We have a shortage in labor in agriculture right now, not just in the fruits and vegetables, but in our dairy industry as well as other industries. And we're very concerned about it, Phil. And if we don't do something about it, unfortunately, if we don't import some of our labor through those legal programs, we will import our food in the future.
You know, Scott, there's a lot of things about that strike me, and I appreciate your deference to, and I understand the makeup of Farm Bureau, and that it is the board of directors are all farmers, and even you have a young farmers representative on your board.
Absolutely.
And so these are folks who are dealing with these real life issues, business issues, and yet they have a place where they can come to. And I can't imagine being a farmer trying to figure this out on my own, and yet this program, this company that you guys have created to help them walk through this process and help them secure the labor force they need I think is just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's a lifeline for a little bit. It doesn't address all the needs. We're growing the company slow. The amount of paperwork, Phil, to bring in workers to the legal program through the federal agencies, it's huge. The amount of effort that it takes. The company we've developed, we've hired bilingual folks to help with training, to help with to get a better understanding of what the labor needs on the farm are, to get the most out of the relationship, the contractual relationship that these folks have with these workers. And it helps, but it's not addressing the whole issue. Our farmers are out here in Washington, D.C. this week talking with the congressman about how can we put either an ag worker program together where we bring legal workers in, and if we dot all of our I's, cross all our T's, and they're good members of the workforce while they're here, is there a way that we can expedite the process, that we can make this a little bit less cumbersome from a paperwork standpoint? We want to do everything we're supposed to, but boy, it's not easy, and we're only able to bring in a small number of workers for what we need.
And there's so many things I like about this conversation, but one of the things that resonates with me is when you talk about food security and what it's going to take to solve the problem, breaking it down into solvable chunks is absolutely critical. And what you've just described is the same process for addressing this labor problem, right? You start to break things down into solvable chunks, then you communicate with the people that have a vested interest in solving the problem. You grow the number of people until you have critical mass, if you will, so that you can get the problem solved, and before you know it, it's solved. So that process is what we keep coming back to on Food for Thought, and why it's so exciting to have you on the show talking about what you're doing, because the farmers are absolutely critical to food security. And even though that may seem like so obvious when you say it out loud, right? Yet solving this problem for farmers is going to be part of what it takes to have a food secure Michigan. There's no question about it.
No, you're right. You're right, Gerry. I know I'm picking at you, but I mean, we really do sound like we're just so academic and full of intelligence, don't we? Say, help meeting the need of the farmer, but thank God for Scott and for the Michigan Farm Bureau and his team. And I agree with you. You have a great team, Scott, that are in the gap, standing in the gap on behalf of Michigan farmers. We
do our very best, sir, and we're blessed with some brilliant staff and even better leaders out in the countryside. Our folks on farms are they're good business people, they're great community people, and they're great leaders. And we're blessed that they're willing to do what they do for Farm Bureau as through service and not through some obligation.
I think some of the conversations you're having, and I'm real excited to hear about the innovative ideas that the farmers are bringing to the legislature or the Congress there in Washington, D.C., because, if policies that are in place now were going to fix the problem, we wouldn't have the problem, right? So it's going to take innovative ideas, and you guys have some.
Well, we do our best. We have a great policy development process. Our farmers lead it throughout the year. They're constantly thinking about what's next. They've always been innovators and risk takers. And when they can bring that together and they can talk with each other and share ideas at events like this or in other places, and I want to help, too, understand that there's so many different kinds of farmers out here this week. We got a couple they raise organic chickens and beef cattle for a niche market in the Grand Rapids area. Wonderful folks. And we got folks here that are milking, a couple hundred head of cattle. We got folks that are picking vegetables, raising asparagus. Christmas tree growers are out here, folks that have greenhouses. Wow. Agriculture is very blessed with its diversity in our state, not just by crop, but by the way that we produce. And I hope every farmer in the state is successful in filling a niche if they can, and also the reality that we have a hungry country and a hungry population, that we just need to continue to grow our ability to grow more.
He's Scott Piggott. He is the CEO for the Michigan Farm Bureau, and you're listening to Food for Thought. Scott, I just have to say that when you get back to Michigan, we want to have you here in the WJR studio so that we can continue this conversation in person.
I'd be honored.
It'd be great to have you. So how do folks learn more about Michigan Farm Bureau? How can they find you?
Michigan Farm Bureau is not hard to find. We are blessed with having a great website. We're alive on YouTube and Facebook, and God bless social media, probably that I should understand better than I do, but I'm blessed with having some folks that do better than I do with it. We also have 65 county farm bureaus across our state that bring farmers together for some great innovative ideas and some great programming. So not hard to find us. We're also blessed with having a fantastic insurance company that has 470 agents across the state, and all those folks know how to connect with us. Well,
do you have the website off the top of your head for the association, Scott?
Sure, I do. MICHFB.com. MICHFB, F as in Frank, B as in boy.com.
Awesome.
And we got a lot of great information out there. We do a lot of work in schools. We've recently constructed a mobile science lab that is going to see about 8,000 students at their schools. 40-foot trailer with great learning stations. It's a great time to work for Farm Bureau. We definitely want to have you back in here at the at WJR station in order to talk about the science lab for sure. It's too special. Scott, thanks so much for being on Food for Thought, and safe travels back to Michigan. Thanks, Phil and Gerry.
You're listening to Food for Thought with Dr. Phil Knight, sponsored by the Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and the Food Bank Council of Michigan, creating a food-secure state. And now, another Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan moment.
Cody Baker is here with me for the Farm Bureau Moment. Cody, I know that you and your husband, you run a cash crop operation in an apple orchard down in St. Joseph County, and your hearts must be full because of what I'm hearing is the apples that you donate to the food banks and to the churches and the pantries in your area are helping a tremendous amount of people.
It is. Yes, it is.
Well, thank you for doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about your operation and really why you're donating?
We have a 30-acre orchard that carries peaches, pears, and apples, and we do some strawberries and sweet corn. My husband and I also run a 1,200-acre rural crops, but we donate just because it's good for the community. We enjoy doing that. It helps the schools learn how things are grown, how to prepare their own food, and things like that.
Wow, that's got to be a great partnership between you and Michigan Farm Bureau.
Oh, it is. Farm Bureau does a lot for the community, and we enjoy helping with Farm Bureau and giving back.
Well, Cody, thanks so much for not only just investing your life in this agricultural sector and growing food. We understand in the food bank world that solving hunger starts in the field, and we can't thank you guys enough for what you do.
Well, thank you very much.
And for your gifts to the churches and the pantries and the food banks. They're going to feed hungry people in your area, and we admire you and celebrate you, and thank you for those gifts as well.
Well, thank you for acknowledging everything that we do.
Well, it's our pleasure. She's Cody Baker, and we're very thankful for their efforts. Thank you very much, Cody. Gerry, great conversation with Scott Piggott there, who is doing the work of advocacy with Michigan farmers in D.C. right now. What were some of your thoughts?
Well, so many thoughts, and again, lots of energy, people solving real problems to address a very, very important issue, which I don't know if there's anything more important than our food supply, really. And so one of the things that pops right to mind is the 1 million pounds of asparagus that was unable to be harvested because of a lack of labor. Well, let's get down to a little deeper there and say not only a lack of labor in terms of people, but the funds it takes to actually harvest the product.
Right.
And one of the most innovative things that the Food Bank Council of Michigan made happen years ago and continues to be a huge source of food for our food banks across the state is the Michigan Agricultural Surplus System. It's called MASS, and a phenomenally powerful partnership between the food banks and the legislature and Michigan farmers to drive some huge value to people in our state.
Yeah. Well, and there's another partner there. You're exactly right. I mean, the legislature have always carried the water for us on MASS. And this is a program, Michigan Agricultural Surplus System, as you said, that allows the Food Bank Council to purchase seconds from the farmers. So it would be food that would either be left in the field, would not continue to be harvested, and it creates a secondary market for them. So the good news is we've gotten so proficient at doing that our national organization, Feeding America, has asked us to resource Michigan farmers, not just to our 7 food banks, but also to the entire Feeding America network, which creates, Gerry, an additional 23 secondary markets for Michigan farmers through our program.
And it's getting much needed, healthy, high-quality food to the people who need a little bit of help to get to the next success in their life.
Sure.
So connecting those dots, right, that's so much about how we're going to get to food security for our community.
Well, you mentioned the legislature, and they have been great to work with through the years with our MASS line item. But also this year, for the first time, the governor's executive budget included a $500,000 increase one-time increase to the MASS line item. Now, of course, we'd like to see that rolled into the line item and become an increase that moves on for every year. Because, I mean, you just did the math. You're talking about over 9 million pounds of food being distributed fresh produce, Michigan produce, distributed through this program in the last year alone.
And looking for another 4 million pounds from this $500,000. And, that fundamentally, when you talk about the things that are low cost and high impact, looking at these opportunities right in our own backyard, the farmers that are already committed to this, they're going to produce more food or as much food as they can on the land that they have. And not all of it's going to be perfect, but it's all usable.
Sure, absolutely. It might not be the cleanest, most prettiest apple, but it doesn't mean it can't be eaten, it can't be converted, it can't be used to create food security across our state. In all the conversations I've had with Scott through the years, this is what I walk away from. And really, I think we need to talk to our marketing Edge partnerships. And Lori's in the studio with us, Lori Richard. Scott and I have actually talked about this, so I probably shouldn't say this on air, but I'm going to do it anyway. We really need to think about this partnership that we have between Farm Bureau and the Food Bank Council and the 7 food banks and all of our mission, because solving hunger starts in the field. And if they're not able to get the food out of the field, it's going to choke down throughout the rest of the process line. And we're not going to be able to meet this goal that we have for our state in creating food security.
And we've got to take advantage of every opportunity where we're already investing resources to make the food available at the lowest possible cost. So we now have the individual frozen products like broccoli and sweet potatoes and beans that, we've got another effort going on with the state of Michigan right now to say, let's make it easier for those food producers to take what they're not able to bag because it doesn't meet a color spec or it doesn't meet a shape spec, right?
Right.
But it's perfectly good food. It's already been harvested. It's already been processed. How do we take that food and get it to the people that need it?
So Ken Estelle, who we've had on Food for Thought previously, the CEO from Feeding America West Michigan, is leading that project, and we're making some good progress there. But what we really need is some funds to kick that pilot to the next level. Last year, we just worked with one processor, the smallest processor in the area, and we still rescued 3 million pounds of food. I'm thinking, I should get an amen or an oh me.
That's right. The applause track, we got to put that back on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, geez. I think that's pretty incredible. So we are asking the state of Michigan to come alongside of us and help us with this project. We're asking our legislature to see the value in this because we believe it could be, if it grows to its potential, the largest source of free, fresh, frozen food that our industry has ever experienced.
And it connects to so many of the other things we're doing. So again, this project that we have, this idea, this mission, this vision about a hunger-free community happens when you connect the dots in the right ways. Healthy food is critical to our healthcare system. It's critical to the patients of those systems to have access regularly to that healthy food. So we know the food is there. We know that there's a capacity issue that can be solved, and if we address that capacity issue, suddenly all these pieces of the system that benefit when food security is solved start to save money. That becomes more resources available to solve the problem, and one thing builds on the next. And you're going to see that happening as we continue with the show. I promise you, a year from now, the things we're talking about right now are going to have happened, and the problem will be less complicated then than it is now.
I believe that's true with these innovative solutions that are coming and the groundswell of support that Food for Thought, the show here, is helping us to create. Because, I mean, you just have a cross-section of all of our society, from corporate down to the farmer, down to the people who are food insecure. Everyone is coming together to solve this problem.
And I want to take that idea to a whole nother level, and it really gets back to your opening monologue. It really gets back to when you talked about how food communicates value. So we're talking about getting some of the best, highest quality available food that would make anybody proud to have their neighbors over to consume it with them, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And when you start to take those ideas and communicate to the people that need a little bit of help right now so that they can get on to their next success in life, and you're giving them the highest quality, best available food anywhere, especially in Michigan where the quality of food is so amazing. And that's what you're communicating when you're helping them overcome challenges in their life. How much more valuable do they feel? And that value translates into success. There is no doubt in my mind.
Well, I think when you're able to do that, yes, you're distributing food, but also you're giving hope. And that's powerful.
And pride.
Yeah.
And a sense of worth.
It's Food for Thought with Dr. Phil Knight.
So here's a little food for thought as we close out the show. One of the favorite staple meals when I was in East Africa for almost 10 years is a food called ugali. My kids called it uyucky. It's a big bowl of cornmeal paste. So it's like really bad cornbread. And they put the bowl in front of you, and everyone reaches in and grabs a handful, and you eat it. And so I would have to sprinkle some salt on it and, maybe some hot sauce. But that's what happens. And if you're a germaphobe, you just don't go back in. You don't go for seconds, right? But I've drank a concoction that was calf blood and urine fermented with charcoal inside of a gourd. And when they took the top off the gourd, it was like you could smell it from across the room. But I drank it. I ate ugali. I drank this. I've eaten chicken soup literally with the head in the bowl. I mean, that's the first time I ever had a soup that winked at me, So it's crazy the experiences that you have with food. But going back to the opening monologue, food communicates value. And when we go to a village, they would always give us their best. Too oftentimes in our Western society, we give our least. If food communicates value, then we have no choice but to give our best. They would give their best to me, and I think that we, as the Food Bank Council of Michigan and our 7 food banks that serve all 83 counties, we can do no less. We can only give our best. Thanks for listening to Food for Thought. I'm Dr. Phil Knight with Gerry Brisson. We'll be back next week.
Food for Thought has been a presentation of Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and by the Food Bank Council of Michigan, creating a food-secure state.